I wasn't always this broken. Before the pills, before the nightmares, before I started hearing rhythms and static, I was Petty Officer Logan Pierce. Ooh, yes, Navy sonar technician first class. Back then, I didn't drink. I didn't tremble when water touched my skin. I didn't wake up screaming. I was damn good at my job, had a knack for interpreting sonar feedback the way some people hear melodies in chaos. They called me the Echo Whisperer, said I could identify a whale's fin print from 50 nautical miles away. They gave me medals for it. They don't give medals for what happened next. It started with a mission that didn't have a name, just a code, Project Dark Current. I was stationed aboard the USS Sacramento, a Seawolf-class submarine retrofitted for ultra-deep recon. Normally, we patrolled the usual zones, North Pacific, Arctic borders, but this time, we were ordered to the Tonga Trench, the deepest known point in the southern hemisphere, a black scar in the ocean floor that even no AA doesn't fully chart. We weren't told much, just that we were assisting with an acoustic anomaly surveillance operation under joint command from the Office of Naval Intelligence and DARPA. What they meant was, something down there was making noise, and it wasn't a tectonic plate. There were 26 of us when we left Pearl Harbor. By the time we surfaced, only 3 were still alive, and one of them can't even remember his own name. I remember the moment everything shifted. We'd been submerged for 4 days. My console was lit up with clean sonar feedback, quiet, controlled, uneventful. The BQ-Q5 system had recently been upgraded with some experimental thermal layer compensation matrix, so I spent most of my shift recalibrating for false returns. It was boring, comforting. Even then came the silence. Total signal loss. At first, I thought it was a system fault, rebooted the array, rechecked the coupling, but all readouts came back clean. The sonar wasn't failing. It just wasn't bouncing off anything. No echoes, no seafloor, no walls, just a void. Captain Harris came to the sonar station himself. That never happened unless something was very wrong. He looked more pale than usual, lips pressed in a tight line. You picked anything up, no contacts. Sir, not even scatter, like we're floating in a vacuum. He nodded once. Maintain silent running. If anything changes, don't wait. Report immediately. I waited until he left the room to mutter, "You'll be the first to know when Cthulhu knocks." I thought it was a joke. That was before I heard it. The first ping came at 0224 hours. A long, low-frequency pulse. Below 20 hertz. Felt more than heard. It came from beneath us, and it wasn't ours. No Navy ping has that kind of harmonic signature. Not layered like that. Not deliberate. It was as if the ocean had just spoken, and it wanted to see if we were listening. I ran a directional triangulation sweep. Nothing. It was like the signal was everywhere and nowhere. But then the noise came again, this time stronger. The feedback warped through the system like a ripple on a sheet of metal. Several stations around me blinked out. Screens glitched. And then came the shape. It appeared on the waterfall display as a Masno, a presence bigger than anything I'd ever seen in the water. Roughly 3 miles long, 2 miles wide, moving, alive. The shape was blurry at first, distorted by pressure differentials and thermal layering, but the outline began to settle. It wasn't a school of fish, not a geological structure. It was something singular, one living organism. At 0300, emergency protocols kicked in. We were ordered to maintain absolute silence. No active sonar, no propulsion, just float. But even then, I felt it moving beneath us, not swimming, rising. Around Earth 34E5, I heard the third ping, and this time, it brought something else with it. A shadow moved across the external cameras impossibly slow. Then, an eye, not a metaphor, not sonar hallucination, a real, biological eye, larger than our entire sail structure, drifted upward to face us. It didn't blink, didn't lunge, it just watched, as if studying us. Everything after that unraveled. Pressure alarms went off despite no change in depth. Then came the flooding. Compartment 3 took in water. Crew began shouting. A fire broke out near the reactor controls. All systems lightened. Propulsion. Even air recirculation started blinking like they were being jammed by something. Thinking, and above us, in the water, the lights began to appear. Pulses of bioluminescence: green, blue, ultraviolet. Each flash synchronized like a language. We weren't watching it anymore. It was talking to us, and it wanted to see who would answer. The lights kept pulsing for a full minute, hypnotic, deliberate, like a deep-sea Morse code I couldn't understand. Everyone on the sonar deck had frozen. Even the guys who used to joke around during drills sat stiff, pale, and silent. I remember Gibson, our comm specialist, whispering, "It's learning us, not watching, not stalking, learning." That word stuck in my brain like a splinter. Captain Harris ordered everyone to combat readiness. That meant minimal systems, no external comms, no propulsion, and absolutely no sonar pings unless authorized. But combat readiness meant nothing down here. We were too deep to launch torpedoes, too deep to surface quickly, too deep to run. The pressure outside the hull was approaching 7 inches. At that depth, if the hull failed, we wouldn't die screaming, we'd be vaporized. I asked Harris directly, "Sir, what are we really here for?" He didn't answer at first. Then he sighed. "We're not the first ones to pick this thing up. It's been recorded before 1977 off the coast of Chile, 1996 near the Kurils, but the signals were always faint, fuzzy. It never stuck around." He paused. "This time, it's waiting. At Mofushi, the lights vanished, just blinked out like a curtain being drawn. But that didn't calm anyone. If anything, it was worse, because silence, we learned, was its next move. We drifted for 2 more hours. I kept watching the waterfall screen for anomalies. Any movement, any ripple, but it was clean, too clean, like the water itself had stopped moving. The deeper you go in sonar, the more distortion you deal with: thermoclines, salinity layers, pressure differentials. But now, it was pristine, empty. It felt like we were floating inside a sensory deprivation tank. Nothing existed but us. Then someone screamed. Crewmanly engine room. He came tearing into the central passage, eyes wide, shirt soaked with seawater. Kept shouting, "I saw it. I saw it. It was inside." We restrained him. I sat next to him while he shook and mumbled. He kept repeating, "It didn't have a face. It looked like me, but no face." This sedated him and locked him in medical. He never spoke again, not even once. I started hearing it again that afternoon. Not the pulses this time, but a voice, faint, embedded in static, coming through the sonar feedback channel even when it was supposed to be off. It wasn't human, not alien either. It was old. There's a depth to sound you can't fake, like the difference between a kid reading poetry and a voice that's felt it all. This voice had pressure behind it, weight, millennia worth of silence, finally choosing to speak. And it said just one thing: not alone. I pulled the headset off and threw it across the console. No one else had heard it, or so I thought. Then Foster, our youngest tech, walked over and whispered, "You heard it too, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. He leaned in, eyes darting around the dark deck. It said my name. At 1617, we made the first critical error. Captain Harris authorized a passive ping sweep low frequency. Wide range. It was supposed to be safe. Non-invasive, just a sonar flashlight. I begged him not to, but the brass was breathing down his neck, and the science officer, Dr. Kent, civilian contractor from Norway A, insisted it was necessary for data acquisition. They fired the sweep, and for the first few seconds, everything looked fine, until the screen broke. I don't mean glitched, I mean shattered. Not literally, but in the feedback cascade. The sonar waterfall lit up with overlapping pulses that made no acoustic sense. A wave of noise that wasn't an echo. It was repetition, mimicry. The creature had recorded our sonar and was now bouncing it back, in perfect time, like it was playing with us, or playing us. The lights returned, this time, not in patterns but as limbs, dozens of them, miles long, stretching into the abyss, glowing faintly with geometric markings like circuitry made of coral and starlight. And then came the eye again, closer now, and this time, it blinked. Harris lost it, started yelling for emergency servicing procedures, but it was too late. That's when the hull groaned a deep, Metallic warning like a dying whale. Compartment 5 buckled. 2 men gone. The ocean had reached inside and taken them without spilling a single drop of blood. All remaining systems were fried. Only emergency lighting remained, a hellish red glow casting warped shadows on every bulkhead. The silence between us and that thing grew louder than the alarms, and through it all, I could still hear the whisper in the static. We remember. I don't know how we got out alive. Somehow, an emergency ballast purge triggered. Somehow, the Sacramento rose. Somehow, I woke up in a naval hospital 2 days later with cracked ribs and a ruptured eardrum. And somehow, they told me it was all in my head. They kept me sedated for the first few days. Every time I opened my eyes, there was a new uniform standing over me. Navy brass, psych officers, men in gray suits who didn't introduce themselves. They didn't ask questions. They just stared, took notes, told me I'd experienced severe decompression trauma and hallucinations triggered by oxygen imbalance and deep ocean stressors. They called it narcosis psychosis, said the brain can't handle that much pressure, that my mind invented the creature. But here's the thing, I was trained for this. I know what narcosis feels like. You don't get perfect recall. You don't get identical details shared between people who were isolated from each other. You don't get matching nightmares. On the third night, Foster woke up screaming. We were in adjacent hospital rooms. I heard him shouting through the wall. It's under the ice. It's in the water. The light don't look at the light. Then silence. By morning, they transferred him. No forwarding info. No discharge paperwork. Just gone. I asked the attending nurse. She looked confused. Said no one named Foster was ever admitted. I tried to find Dr. Kent too. The no-A guy. The one who said it was okay to run the sweep. But when I looked him up, the only doctor, Jonathan Kent, in NOAA's directory was a marine biologist stationed in Maine, never set foot on a subsea. They'd erased him, scrubbed every trace. My discharge came fast, too fast. I was deemed unfit for further sea duty due to psychological instability. No ceremony, no debrief, no pension, just a manila envelope of papers, a bus ticket, and a one-sentence warning from a guy in dark sunglasses. If you ever speak about Tonga again, we will sink you. I thought that was the end. I tried to live normally. Got a job fixing sonar equipment for small fishing outfits along the Pacific coast. Married a woman who thought I was just quiet and haunted in a poetic kind of way. I never told her about what I saw. Never let her see the notebooks I kept under the floorboards, pages filled with sonar printouts, light pulse diagrams, sketches of the eye. But every night, around 3 a.m., I'd wake up wet, soaked in sweat. Yes, but sometimes salt water. I started noticing things. The same pulse coming through marine radios in the different ports. Fishermen talking about the deep humming off the edge of the trench. Divers disappearing near undersea canyons where no currents should exist. And then the dreams return. Not dreams. Exactly. Memories of something still watching. Of being remembered by a thing that had existed for longer than our sun had burned. I got a call one night. Unlisted number. Voice like gravel. Is this Logan Pierce? Yes. You were on the Sacramento. Tonga Trench. 2020. I said nothing. The voice continued. You're not crazy. It's real. And it's not alone. Click. That's when I realized we weren't just a random contact. We were a test. The creature or whatever it was didn't kill us immediately. It could have crushed us like a soda can. But it chose to observe. It mimicked, echoed. It learned our systems, our sonar, our words. I think it was sending a message, not to us. To the others like it, the lights, the pulses, the voice in the static. It wasn't communication. It was identification. Like whales singing in the dark. It was telling its kind. Here, these are the ones. These are the surface walkers. Watch them. Sometimes I wonder if it's still down there beneath the trench. Or worse, if it moved. If it's under me right now as I sit by the harbor, watching the sonar buoys blink. I've started keeping a log again. Not for the Navy, not for science, but for warning. Because a week ago, I hooked up a private sonar system to a fishing trawler off the Oregon coast. And at exactly 3:24 hours, the pulse came back. Same harmonic layers, same depth echo profile, same impossible size. But this time, it wasn't just one. There were 3 signals, perfectly spaced, moving together. And then, the voice again, this time in a lower register. We remember you. I haven't slept since the triple contact. Every time I close my eyes, I feel the pressure again, not just around me, but inside me, like the ocean is still there, pressing behind my ribs. My wife left 3 days ago, took the dog, the houseplants, even the watercolor painting I liked from the hallway. Left a note. You're not here anymore. Logan, I don't know where you went, but it's not this world. She's right. I moved into a small apartment above the marina. Nothing fancy, just me, a mattress on the floor, a sonar array I built from salvage parts, and a desk covered in charts of the Pacific Plate. I've been tracking the signals. They're not random. Every 11 days, they return. Same timing, same pattern. Each pulse followed by silence, then a new harmonic. They're talking, but not to us, to each other. I shared my findings on a classified oceanographic forum. Deep sea specialists, off-grid captains, retired Navy. I used a pseudonym, thought maybe someone would validate what I saw. Instead, my post was taken down in less than an hour. Then came the email. Mr. Pierce, cease your inquiry. This is your only warning. No signature, no header, but attached was a single file, a still image from the Sacramento sonar screen. The last ping before the hull groaned. I hadn't shared that image anywhere. I'm being watched. Phone lines click when I call old shipmates. My internet's throttled at night. Sometimes I hear static even when everything is unplugged. But I won't stop. I need to understand what we found, or what found us. So I reached out to the only other man I knew who saw it and lived, Captain Thomas Harris. The Navy said he retired with honors, lives quietly in Bar Harbor, Maine. But when I got there, his cottage was boarded up, grass waist high, newspapers stacked on the porch. Neighbors hadn't seen him in over a year. I broke in, didn't care anymore. The inside was a bunker, foil-lined walls, blackout curtains, maps, red strings, old sonar printouts tacked everywhere. It smelled like seawater and dust. There, on the kitchen table, was his journal. First page read, "It followed me home." The entries were unhinged at first, paranoia, voices in the plumbing, eyes in the drain. But then he got technical, pages full of coordinates, signal strength analysis, patterns too specific to be imagined. Final entry, dated 8 months ago. 3 pulses, all synced. I think they're preparing something. If you find it, Logan, don't answer when it knocks. That night, I stayed in his house, brought in my portable sonar rig, set it up in the basement, and at 03:24 a.m., the signal came again, but this time, it changed. The tone rose slightly, only a few hertz, but enough to register. Then came the distortion like a static echo behind the ping. When I filtered it out and ran it through a spectrogram, it formed shapes, not words, not letters, shapes like glyphs, almost like language. I printed them, sent them to a former cryptolinguist I knew from sonar school, told him it was a project for an ARG I was designing. He called me an hour later. "Where did you get these?" "What do you mean?" He sounded shaken. "I've seen this before. A fragment during training. Deep classified Navy linguistics project. They called it the Abyssal Archive." That was the first time I heard the phrase. Since then, I found it carved, yes. Carved into old wrecked submarines. Scratched into hulls like warnings. Lu Elsum as Thresher. K-129. Even the Kursk. All disasters they said were accidents. All ships that went too deep. My theory. They've been contacting us for decades. But only now. They're trying to be understood. Not because they want to communicate, but because they want to be remembered. And maybe that's worse. Because if something at the bottom of the sea has waited this long to speak, waited through wars, tsunamis, tectonic shifts, entire civilizations rising and falling, it must be patient, and it must be ancient. And now, it wants us to listen. Last night, I recorded something I can't explain. My sonar rig, same one I built from salvage, powered off by itself. All lights dimmed, but the transducer still emitted something. I couldn't hear it, but my cat did. It ran to the window and started hissing at the harbor. There was nothing there, just black water. But the reflection, in the glass, there was an eye, huge, still, watching. I didn't sleep after seeing that reflection. I couldn't. I sat on the cold tile floor of the apartment, staring at the window, waiting for the eye to come back. But the water outside remained perfectly still. The moonlight shimmered across the marina like nothing had happened. But I know what I saw, and I know how sonar works. What showed up in that glass wasn't light, it was sound. A kind of echo image, a sonic ghost. Whatever was in the harbor didn't need to be seen. It just needed to resonate. The next morning, I packed what I could, drove out of the harbor town and into the hills. Found a cheap rental cabin with no internet and spotty reception. Hauled my sonar gear into the basement, set up a generator, and went completely dark. No phones, no pings, no broadcast, just listening. I told myself I was just being careful, but deep down I knew this wasn't about safety. It was ritual. The way sailors used to throw coins to Poseidon before setting sail. You can't work sonar for as long as I did and not start believing the ocean feels you. I ran the logs again. Every recording from the Sacramento mission, every classified sweep I secretly copied before discharge, every recent pulse captured off the Oregon coast. I played them all together, layered on top of one another, and something happened. At 3:24 a.m., same time as always, my rig lit up with interference. Not normal signal corruption, intentional interference. A low frequency tone modulated across multiple channels. At first, I thought it was crosstalk. Then I slowed it down. There was breath in it. Inhale, exhale, measured, rhythmic, like something was using my sonar to breathe. I played it back over and over, each time feeling it more in my chest than my ears. My ribs ached, my teeth hurt, like the resonance was adjusting me. I don't even remember falling asleep that night, but when I woke up, I had written something on the wall of the cabin, scrawled in charcoal from the stove. They are already here. I don't sleep in the dark anymore, not because of what I might see, but because of what I might hear. Yesterday, I drove down to a small naval outpost near Crescent Bay, said I was there to drop off parts. The guy at the gate waved me in, told me to go see Chief Ballard in the sonar department. Ballard was 60-something, built like a brick, with a hearing aid and a beard like driftwood. He shook my hand, didn't ask too many questions. I asked if I could test their wideband hydrophone, just for fun. He said yes. When the sweep hit 28, 0 feet, the screen turned blue, empty, but then a spike, 3 pulses, one low, one high, one modulated, each spaced exactly 4 seconds apart. I turned to Ballard, expecting confusion. Instead, he just nodded. Been getting those since last summer. What do you think it is? He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, I think it's something that remembers us. He pulled a photo from his desk drawer, faded, dog-eared. It was of a submarine crew in black and white, men in old uniforms, standing proudly on the deck of a World War II diesel sub. Ballard tapped the photo. That's my father. USS Growler, 1948, vanished off Guam. No wreckage, no SOS, just one final sonar pin recorded before contact lost. I stared at him. He nodded again. Same damn pattern. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a recent phenomenon, not a 2020 fluke. It's been happening for decades, and they've been cataloging us. But why now? Why surface? Why answer back? And what the hell is the Abyssal Archive? I left the base with a copy of their most recent sonar logs, burned onto an unmarked CD. Back at the cabin, I loaded the files into my spectral software, ran them through my new filter. The pulses shifted, then separated. 3 signals, one slow, one fast, one buried like a whisper. I isolated the whisper, boosted it 1000x, ran it through waveform translation, and it spoke, not words, but something like a name over and over. The same syllables, Nalkorash, Nalkorash, Nalkorash. I looked it up, nothing in English, nothing in science, but a few hits in ancient texts, scraps from old underwater mythologies. One line from a half-translated Proto-Mesopotamian tablet chilled me. Nal Karash, the sleeper beneath the black mirror. When it wakes, the sea will forget silence. I think they've woken it up, or worse, we did. I've been awake for 42 hours. My hands won't stop shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of understanding. From the moment I decoded that name Nal Korash, something in me cracked. I used to believe in order, in sonar sweeps, math, and systems. But now, I know the sea doesn't play by our logic. It mimics it until it doesn't have to. I went back to the marina. The harbor was dead quiet. No gulls, no waves. Even the air was still, as if waiting for something. I asked around, casually, about the fishermen. One of the dockhands said, they've been staying out less. Said the ocean's wrong lately. Feels heavy. Heavy. That's the exact word Captain Harris used in his last journal entry. The water feels heavy, like it's watching. I called Tyler Foster's sister. He was my sonar tech partner on the USS Sacramento. She hadn't heard from him in almost a year. Said the VA told her he was receiving treatment. Treatment for what? She asked. They wouldn't say. She forwarded me one photo she had found on his old burner phone. It was a frame-by-frame still from a sonar screen date stamped 3 months after the Sacramento disaster. In it, you could see a shape barely visible rising from a trench off the coast of Argentina. Thousands of miles from where we first saw it. I triangulated it. The signal pattern matched the same triple pulse. It's moving. The theory I was afraid to even whisper to myself is now forming into something solid, something real. Nal Korash isn't just some mythic beast slumbering in the deep. It's a sentience, a vast alien consciousness spread through the trench networks like neurons in a brain. What we saw in the Mariana, that was just a fragment, a node, a nerve ending. The real entity could span oceans, and now it's waking up. I tracked 2 more sonar anomalies off the Kermadec Trench and the Tonga Plate, identical pulses, synchronized to the second. That's when I realized they weren't just waking, they were signaling each other. I drove south toward the coast. I needed to hear the open water again. Found a rocky cliff near Mendocino, set up my parabolic hydrophones, and pointed them at the Pacific. Midnight, the wind cut through my coat. The sea was black glass. At 12:24 a.m., my equipment screamed, not audibly, but in waveform, a pulse so dense it nearly fried the receiver. It only lasted 2 seconds, but when I slowed the signal and visualized it, it showed a shape again. This time, unmistakably, a human silhouette, not just any human. It looked like me, same height, same shoulder line, same posture, but the face completely empty, no features, just smooth, pale distortion. I stared at it for nearly an hour before it faded from the screen. I'm not sure how long I sat there in the cold, but I remember the feeling like something ancient and endless had just said, I know who you are, and not as a threat, but as a rehearsal. Back at the cabin, the static in my walls started again. The pipes hum at night, always the same tone, always the same intervals. I stopped turning on the faucet. The water comes out warm now, too warm, and sometimes it smells like salt. Even here, in the mountains, I dream in sonar pings, short, long, short. When I wake up, my nose bleeds. Last night, I found glyphs etched into the frost on my window. Same symbols I saw in the South China Sea logs. They're not random, they're instructions. I found a final note in Harris's journal taped beneath the back cover. We were never the apex, we were the echo. If that's true, then our mistake wasn't descending into the trench. Our mistake was answering back. And now, they know our voice, our names, our frequency. I decided to risk it. Drove 6 hours up the coast to a University Marine Sciences Center. I used to consult with, told them I had legacy sonar data. I wanted analyzed for anomalies. One of the grad students, a kid named Adrian, let me into their underwater acoustics lab. Nothing too weird, right? He asked. I smiled. Nothing you're responsible for. We loaded the logs from the Sacramento mission. At first, just the usual deep sea noise. Distant whale songs, thermocline turbulence. Then at the 3:14 a.m. mark, same timestamp as always, came the pattern. Low pulse, high frequency. Then the modulated whisper. Adrian froze. That doesn't sound organic, he said. Not whale, not ship, not even geological. He ran it through a few recognition algorithms. One pinged. Pattern match. BCI. Binary Cognitive Interface. Wait, I asked. What's that? He looked uneasy. Military tech. He muttered. Classified stuff. Used to map neural patterns from sonar response. It's supposed to detect intention. Intention, not presence. We played the file again only this time. Running it through their spectrospatial reconstructor. The waveform began to reshape. Lines formed. Curves. And then a shape emerged on the monitor. A brain, not human. Too large. Lobe divisions like nothing in vertebrate biology. And buried at its center a core that pulsed. Alive. Adrian stepped back. Jesus, it's not just an animal. It's a mind, I said. We both stared as the pulses sharpened. The system began mapping it like a living network. Fibers radiated outward, like trench maps. Each node lit up in sequence. Then the lights began to converge. The system crashed. Monitors went black. Sirens briefly chirped, then died. Adrian swore and ran diagnostics. I stared at the black screen, seeing my reflection in the glass. Except, it wasn't mine. The face staring back had no eyes, just pale sockets, and a faint shimmer of blue bioluminescence behind them. I left, didn't say goodbye, didn't answer Adrian's texts. He'll be fine. I hope. Back at my cabin, I smashed my laptop, burned my notes, disconnected the rig. For 3 days I stayed inside, refusing to listen, refusing to hear. But that didn't stop them from talking. On the 4th night, the humming returned deep within the cabin's foundation, a sound no one else would notice. But I've trained my whole life to hear what shouldn't be heard. It was the pulse again, but now it was inside the walls. Inside me, I had a dream. I was back in the sub, drifting, weightless, except this time, I wasn't alone. I looked to my right, and there was Captain Harris, his face pale, his eyes empty. He whispered, "It wants a voice." And then I turned, and sitting across from me in the dark was me, but not quite. It was how I'd look if I'd never escaped. Flesh faded to silver, skin translucent, bones thinner, hands webbed, and from my throat came the same sound I'd heard in the trench. Nal Korash. I woke up choking on seawater. There was none in the cabin, but my clothes were soaked, my boots, and outside, in the snow-dusted forest, I saw footprints, barefoot, webbed, leading away from the cabin. I haven't followed them, not yet, but I know where they go. Back to the ocean, back to the voice, and the worst part, I think I'm starting to understand what it's saying, not just syllables, ideas, dreams, memories that aren't mine, like it's leaking itself into me. And the more I resist, the clearer it gets. They were never trying to sink us. They were trying to merge. I finally followed the footprints. They led me to the lake about 2 miles from the cabin frozen over, but only on the surface. Beneath the thin ice, something moved. Slowly, deliberately, I stood at the edge for almost 20 minutes. No wind, no sound, just the sense that something enormous was resting just beneath, like it was waiting for me to come closer. I didn't. Not that day. But that was the moment I stopped pretending this was over. The next morning, I got an email from a burner account. No subject, no signature. Just a link to a video file titled, Voice from 36,000 FT. MPO. I almost didn't open it. But of course I did. The video showed an ultra-deep sea rover time-stamped 10 years before the Sacramento mission. It wasn't labeled US Navy or Norway. No flags, no insignias, but it was definitely military. The footage was grainy, green-tinted, recorded from a mounted cam as the rover descended into the Kermadec Trench. At 35, 912 feet, the video paused. A sonar log popped up in the corner. Readout scrolled with a rising pulse. The camera tilted. And then, there it was. A wall of flesh, not stone, not silt. Flesh, mottled, bioluminescent, rippling like something breathing in slow motion. The camera approached until the lights caught an eye, the same type we saw in the trench. Only this one was open, and it blinked. There was no sound, just a blank screen. And one final frame. We were warned in 1977. You refused to hear it. I knew what it meant. The WOW signal. Ohio State University, August 15th, 1977. A 72-second burst of radio energy from the Sagittarius constellation. But some fringe oceanographers, myself included, believed the origin was not celestial. It matched the pattern reflected off the Pacific floor. Back then, they said it was space trying to talk to us. But what if space was underneath? That same day, I received a voicemail, distorted, low, gurgling, but it said my name. Logan, then a pause. Then, you're almost ready. That night, I dreamt of the trench again. Only this time I wasn't in a sub. I was swimming. No suit, no tank, just skin and pressure and darkness folding over me. But I could breathe. And all around me were others, not people, but memories of people. Faces I recognized, friends, crew, even Tyler. They weren't dead. They'd been converted. When I woke up, my hands were soaked in salt water. There was no source, nothing broken, no leak, just seawater, inland. I don't sleep much anymore, but when I do, I see the same phrase scrawled on the inside of my skull. It's not the abyss that stares back. What's in the thriller? It's the mirror you brought with you. I think that's what broke Captain Harris. He didn't go mad from what he saw. He went mad because it made sense. I found a final hard drive hidden inside an old hydrophone casing, labeled in red ink, "Do not play." Inside was a single file, re-entry. Wow. I played it at low volume. The waveform was identical to the triple pulse, but layered beneath it was a voice. Human cadence, but wrong, like a speech reversed, slowed, and filtered through liquid. I ran a phonetic inversion. It produced one clear sentence. We remember the shape of you. I don't know what I've become, but I know what's coming. I've stopped fighting the whispers, not because I surrender, but because I need to understand. They aren't just speaking to me anymore. They're speaking through me, and I think they've been waiting for someone like me for a long time. I don't remember driving to the coast. I just remember standing at the cliffs, the ocean roaring below me, salt in the air so thick it stung my eyes. The wind whipped my jacket like a flag torn loose. Some part of me had driven the body here, but not me. Or maybe it was me, what's left of me. The tide was surging unusually high. A storm offshore, maybe, or something moving beneath it. Because every time the waves hit the rocks, they didn't sound like surf. They sounded like breathing. I climbed down the trail cut into the bluff side, boots slipping on damp moss, gravel crunching beneath each step. The wind howled harder the farther I descended until, suddenly, it stopped. Perfect stillness. As if I'd stepped into a bubble where the world had paused. That's when I saw the man, or what I thought was a man. He stood at the water's edge, back turned to me, barefoot, wearing a Navy-issue jumpsuit. I knew that posture, that gait. "Ethan," I called out. No answer. I walked closer, close enough to hear the water lapping around his feet. He turned, and for a second, I thought it really was him. But the eyes too wide, too still. And beneath the collar, something moved beneath the skin, like muscle sloshing in water. "Logan," it said, but not with his voice, with mine. I backed away. It stepped forward. "We remember you," it whispered. "You remember us." Its arms split open at the seams, gills flaring where veins should be. Webbing stretched between the fingers. Its chest pulsed with a blue light, faint and rhythmic, just like the sonar. "Womb, womb, womb. Join," it said. "Medjay. Become." I turned and ran. I made it back to the cabin by dawn. I don't know how. The tires were coated in salt. There were no footprints on the porch, but inside my jacket pocket was a scrap of kelp, still wet, tied in a tight knot. I didn't put it there. I'm not safe anymore. Not from them. Not even from myself. I started blacking out. Whole hours gone. When I checked my bathtub drain, I found brine shrimp. When I checked my voice recorder, I found hours of tape me, whispering in a tongue. I don't know. Something like Croshi Lamar, Ventorath, over and over until my voice broke into wet gargles. I visited an old colleague from the academy, Dr. Nina Shah. She's a deep-sea bioacoustician now, working for an independent marine lab. I brought her one of the pulse recordings, told her it was from an old project. She played it once, then didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she looked at me. "Do you know what this is?" she asked. "You tell me." "It's not sonar," she said. "It's a neural call and response sequence." She pointed at the spike pattern. "This part's a call, but this part here," she tapped another segment. "This is a reply." Something had answered back, something inside us. "Whatever made this," she whispered, "isn't just intelligent." She paused, the blood draining from her face. "It's trying to form a shared language." I didn't stay long after that, but I left her a second copy of the audio. I shouldn't have, because 2 nights later, her lab burned down. They ruled it an electrical fire, but I know better. They didn't want her to translate it, because if we understand what they're saying, we might realize we were never the apex species. We're the ones being cataloged, and they are just beginning to speak. I haven't turned the lights off in 3 days. The cabin's electric bill is going to be a nightmare, but I don't care anymore. Every time I let the darkness settle, I start hearing it again, that deep pulse beneath the floorboards, like my foundation is floating on a heartbeat. Last night I caught myself standing in the middle of the living room, ankle deep in water, only there hadn't been any water in the house. I blinked and it was gone, but my socks were still soaked. The dreams are worse now, not dreams, memories, but not mine. Someone or something has opened a channel. I'm remembering things I never lived. The shape of cities built in impossible geometries beneath ocean crust. The feel of a pressure so immense it collapses lungs in seconds. The knowledge of languages spoken in vibrations, not air. I can't even describe them properly. The human brain isn't built for it, but they're trying to make it fit, trying to mold me. Yesterday I bled salt water, not a metaphor, not a vision. I cut my thumb opening a can of food, and what came out wasn't blood. It was thick, viscous, salty. I tasted it before I even realized what I was doing, and it tasted like the trench. I made the mistake of revisiting my sonar logs, the original data from the USS Sacramento. I kept a backup no one knew about, air-gapped and encrypted. When I pulled up the main sequence, the rhythmic pulses looked different than I remembered. There were gaps, tiny microsecond absences in the waveform. I zoomed in, and the gap spelled something, Morse code. It said, "You are not alone in your shape." I almost threw up, because that means it wasn't just a message. It was a diagnosis. They'd scanned us. Me, my form, my mind. And this entire time, they've been telling me that I'm already part of them. Maybe I always was. I remembered something Captain Harris whispered during the final dive, right before the lights failed. He said, "They're not new. They're returning." I didn't understand then, but now I do. We didn't find something alien down there. We found something ancient, something that remembers before us. And maybe, somehow, we're their legacy, or their spawn, or their unfinished thoughts. I'm not the only one. Either I started searching, late night forums, deep sea diver chat logs, abandoned Navy threads scrubbed from public view. There are others like me, people who've been down there, too deep, too long. They report the same symptoms: saltwater dreams, pulse hallucinations, the voice in your own mouth that isn't yours. Some of them disappeared, some of them changed. One guy uploaded a video titled "My Bones Are Not Mine Anymore." He was shaking so violently it was hard to watch. He kept repeating, "There's cartilage where there wasn't." I didn't have cartilage in my ribs. Then the video cut out. He hasn't posted since. I'm writing this in a spiral notebook now, not my laptop, because the keys are starting to stick together. No reason, no liquid spills. But every time I type, it's like the keyboard is sweating, like the machine itself is being converted. I don't know how much longer I have, not because they're coming, but because I think I'm going to them. I took a drive this morning. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe a sign I could still choose to be human. But the moment I got near the coast, something in my chest pulled tight, like an invisible tether wanted to drag me toward the water. Every boat docked at the marina looked like a coffin. The ocean wasn't sparkling. It was flat, too flat, like a sheet of black glass. No birds, no wind, just the kind of silence that knows it's being watched. So I drove back home, but someone had been inside while I was gone. The door was unlocked. There was a trail of wet footprints leading from the bathroom to my desk. No mud, no sand, just water, like whatever left them had come up straight from the ocean floor. My laptop was still warm. It was open to a Word document I never wrote. No title, just a single line. We were not meant to forget. That night, I made the mistake of answering the phone. It rang at 3, let 7 out, maybe, a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, same number, over and over. By the 6th call, I picked up. I didn't speak, but the voice on the other end was mine, slower, gurgling, like I was speaking underwater. It said, "Your lungs were borrowed, give them back." Then it hung up. I didn't sleep. Instead, I pulled out an old Navy manual and flipped through the sonar incident logs. Buried in one of the redacted files was a reference to something called Project Leviathan. I never heard of it officially, but under a scribbled margin note was a phrase that made me feel sick. Deep acoustic sentience requires human resonance to stabilize long-range cognition. I don't know what that means exactly, but I think they were using us not to capture it, to translate it, maybe even host it. That would explain the dreams, the salt water in my veins, the voice that's not mine, speaking Morse in my sleep. I've started seeing things in reflections, not faces, not shadows, echoes, like memories of people who stood in the mirror before me, people with gills, elongated arms, wet, pupilless eyes. One of them mouthed something through the glass. I think it said, "We remember your voice from before." I smashed the mirror. It didn't break the image. Yesterday, the sea level outside the harbor dropped suddenly, like a massive displacement wave had just passed under. No earthquake, no storm, just a silence in the ocean. And then the harbor buoys all began blinking in unison, not randomly, in perfect rhythm. I counted the pattern. It matched the sonar pulse. We're not scanning them anymore. They're signaling back. I think I'm starting to understand their language. Not in words, in pressure, vibration. Light. It's a language you don't hear. You become it. It lives in your muscles, your bones, the water inside you. And once you start to comprehend, it rewrites everything. I looked in the mirror again just now. My pupils dilated, and for a moment, I thought I saw my own mouth move before my brain told it to. It smiled and said, "You'll breathe better soon." I tried burning the sonar tapes. I drove 30 miles inland, deep into the Mojave, and dug a hole behind an abandoned ranger station. I set the tapes down one by one, my original recordings from the USS Sacramento, the bootleg logs, even the printed waveforms with the hidden Morse code. I doused them with gasoline, lit a match. The fire caught, but the sound didn't stop. Even with the flames hissing, I could still hear the pulse, not in the air, inside my head. It was like my own skull had become an echo chamber. Whoom, whoom, whoom. A heartbeat that wasn't mine. I screamed until I was hoarse. Then I buried the ashes and drove home with blood on my teeth from how hard I'd been clenching my jaw. But it didn't matter, because when I opened the trunk later that night, the tapes were back, intact, bone dry, stacked neatly, as if waiting. I haven't left the house since. The windows are all boarded up, the bathtub's filled with bottled water. Every surface has a towel underneath it to catch the dripping. Yes, dripping. It started 2 days ago. Condensation on the walls, salt crust around the light fixtures. My ceiling fan now spins slower than it should, as if underwater. The final straw was the fridge. I opened it yesterday and the light inside was blue. Not LED blue, not that cold hue from cheap bulbs. This was a deep sea blue, the same glow I saw during the final dive. The milk had congealed into something gelatinous. The oranges were weeping brine. My leftover chicken smelled like fish scales. I threw everything out. Then I closed the fridge, but the light was still on. I unplugged it, still blue. I don't think this is about the ocean anymore. I think they're bringing the ocean here. I keep a log now. Not timestamps or words, those don't help anymore. Instead, I mark how often the house hums. There's a rhythm to it, like a pulse being sent from beneath my floorboards, like sonar. And on nights when the rhythm aligns with my own heartbeat, I start speaking in my sleep. Sometimes I wake up with gills drawn on my neck in pen. Sometimes I wake up with them etched there, scabbed and red. I emailed every Navy contact I had left, commanders, sonar techs, even that CIA spook we used to call Jay. I begged for answers, threatened to leak what I knew. Only one person responded, a burner email with no name. All it said was, "You can't fight memory," then an attachment, a low-resolution satellite image. It showed the Pacific, black and wide. A storm pattern swirled above, but beneath it, barely visible, was a shape, circular, wide, too symmetrical to be natural, almost like an eye. They're looking up at us, still, waiting for our call. At 3:11 a.m. this morning, my phone lit up again. No number, just a ping, like a sonar return. Then one text, "Welcome back." I'm scared, not because they're coming, but because part of me wants them to. Because if the ocean has a mind, maybe it's lonely. Maybe it's calling out to something it left behind in us. Maybe we were never supposed to walk upright. Maybe this is the course correction. I blacked out for 6 hours today. No alcohol, no drugs. Just a moment of dizziness while I was brushing my teeth. And then nothing. When I came to, I was outside, standing in the middle of a dry riverbed, barefoot, clothes soaked, salt crusted into the corners of my eyes. The sun was already setting, and drawn in the sand around me, in perfect concentric spirals, were waveforms, sonar echoes, like those from the trench, except these weren't drawn by hand. They were etched deep into the dirt, each line exactly 3 inches apart, identical to the spacing of the acoustic pulses from the Sacramento mission. I checked my phone. The recording app was open and playing back something in reverse. It was my own voice saying, "We are their echo. We are the resonance they lost." I don't know how long I stood there. I think I cried, not because I was scared, but because for the first time in months, I felt at peace, like something had finally clicked into place, like I had been out of phase with myself and now I wasn't. I walked home slowly, didn't lock the door, didn't turn the lights on. I just listened, and the pulse greeted me soft, steady, like a lullaby. I'm changing. It's not just hallucinations or paranoia anymore. It's in my skin. My sweat leaves salt rings on the sheets now. The nails on my fingers have started curving, hardening like they're adapting to pressure. My eyes burn in daylight, but in the dark, I see things moving in patterns, floating motes, trails of colorless light, shapes that aren't quite there, but I know what they mean. I think I'm starting to read sonar without equipment, like the water itself is speaking, and I'm finally fluent. Last night, I heard something tapping on the wall inside the crawl space. More so. The ridge is ready, Azai. That name doesn't mean anything to me, except it does. I said it out loud once, years ago, on the submarine. During that first deep dive, it slipped out of me before I even knew I'd spoken. Captain Harris looked at me like I'd just recited a burial rite. I'd chalked it up to sleep deprivation. But now I wonder if that was its name, or mine. I checked the logs again, replayed the sonar files in a dark room, overlaid 3 separate frequencies from the Mariana Trench, the Philippine Basin, and the Kermadec Trench. The harmonics aligned, and when I listened closely, there was a voice, low, ancient. It said, "Azai returns through broken shape." I haven't told anyone this, but I've started walking into the ocean at night. Not deep, just up to my waist. I stay there for hours, eyes closed, arms out, listening. The tides touch me like fingers, the current pulses like a heartbeat. And the fear, it's fading, replaced by something colder, something vast. I think I'm becoming part of it, or it's becoming part of me. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I was never meant to be just human. Maybe none of us were. I had another blackout last night. This one was different. When I came to, I wasn't in my house. I was underwater. No wetsuit, no tank, just drifting in cold. Black silence, suspended like a puppet in a dark theater. But I wasn't drowning. I could breathe. The pressure didn't crush me. The cold didn't sting. It felt natural, like I belonged there, and I wasn't alone. All around me, just out of reach, were shapes colossal outlines that moved without displacing water. Limbs the size of skyscrapers, faces without features. They watched me, but not with eyes, with presence. I felt their attention like heat on the back of my neck, except this heat sank into me, filled my blood with something heavy and ancient. They pulsed in unison, like sonar, like prayer. And when I finally spoke, because I couldn't stop myself, I didn't use words. I used frequencies. I think I answered their call, and they welcomed me. I woke up on my living room floor, naked, shivering, salt caked around my nose and eyes. My feet were blistered, raw with sand and barnacle cuts. There was seawater in my lungs. I coughed it up for hours, and still, I didn't call a doctor, because a part of me knows the truth now. Whatever they are, whatever I'm becoming, it's irreversible. This isn't possession, it's resonance, alignment. This morning, I received a package. No sender, no return address. Inside, a plastic evidence bag and a handwritten note on yellow paper. The note said, Sacramento black box recovered off Tonga Trench. This wasn't an accident. Listen carefully. The evidence bag held a waterproof data chip, sonar log, dated 3 weeks after our classified dive. But our mission was the last. There shouldn't have been anything recorded after. I plugged the chip into an isolated laptop, no internet. What I heard chilled me more than anything before. A sonar ping, then another, then the unmistakable hum of English words mimicked through bioluminescent pulse. A translation. The voice said, "We remember the shape of you. We lost our voice in you. You are our limb, our echo, our return." I played it back 5 times, then smashed the chip. Because if this message was broadcast 3 weeks after we were gone, that means the creature or whatever they are is still alive, still transmitting. And it knows my name. I've stopped trying to fight it. I've stopped writing in linear time. Now I leave markings on the walls, waveforms, spirals, diagrams of ocean currents because I can't hold it all in my mind anymore. Memories come out of order. Sometimes I remember things I haven't done yet, like the last day. The one coming soon. The one where I go back to see. I saw it last night, not in a dream. In the mirror, my reflection blinked 3 seconds out of sync with me. Then it whispered in my voice, "The tide has reached the threshold," and the mirror fogged over from the inside. The tide is rising. Every night, a little more seawater seeps up through my floorboards. My basement smells like algae, and when I close my eyes, I see the trench again, its crushing blackness, its impossible depth. It's not a grave, it's a womb. The ocean came for me last night, not in some metaphor, not in my dreams. It entered my home. I woke to a sound I hadn't heard in years, the hydraulic groan of a submarine bulkhead, except I wasn't on a sub. I was in my kitchen, barefoot on linoleum slick with salt water. The sink was overflowing, but it wasn't tap water. It was black, viscous, glowing faintly blue around the edges, like phosphorescent plankton. It crept across the floor, up the walls, and I just watched outside. The street was flooded, not with rain, not with pipes bursting. The tide had come in, miles from the nearest shore, and with it, them, figures in the fog, silhouettes in the shallows, too tall, too thin. They didn't move like humans, didn't walk, just drifted. And whenever one passed beneath a street lamp, the light would flicker like the creature aboard the Sacramento, like the intelligence pulsing beneath the trench. They didn't knock. They didn't need to. I opened the door, and they waited silent until I stepped barefoot into the dark water. The moment it touched my skin, I heard everything. Every sonar ping, every pulse, every life lost to the depths, all of it crashing into my head like a tidal wave of memory. Not just mine, theirs, the creatures beneath, the original minds, the forgotten architects of deep time. They didn't evolve in the sea evolved around them. We're just echoes, fragments of a shape they once wore. They have brought me back to the trench, not physically, Not yet, but in mind, in resonance, and I understood. This has happened before, during mass extinction, during the quiet between ice ages, when the surface forgets, the deep remembers, and now the call has gone out again. A new alignment. I know how this ends. Not with war, not with fire, with flooding, with sonar, with recognition. We are their missing pieces, and they are coming not to invade, but to reclaim tonight. I will walk into the ocean for the last time, not to drown, to return. If you find this log, if you're reading these words, don't be afraid of the deep, be afraid of how much of it lives in you. Because when the tides rise, and they will, you won't need to be pulled under. You'll go willingly, like I did, like we all will. Soon,